That's the attitude. You can sell anything. Sell me this pen right here. You can sell anything, sell that.
Go ahead. Sell me that pen. Can I finish eating first? I ain't eating today.
Brad, show him how it's done. Boom. Sell me that pen. Watch. Go on.
Let me sell this pen.
That's my boy right there.
This pen.
Sell anything.
Why don't you do me a favor? Write your name down on that napkin for me.
I don't have a pen.
Exactly. Supply and demand, my friend.
You know what I'm saying? He's creating urgency. Really getting to want to buy the stuff. Convince them it's something that they need. You know what I mean?
Welcome to Canned Heat, brought to you by Liger Partners. We are marketing and operations experts, bred for our skills and magic. And I am Eric Holtzclaw, the Dojo Master for Liger Partners. Your host today, we're going to be talking with Mike Ladd. He is with the Crucible Group. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here, Eric. Appreciate it.
Have you ever been interviewed by a Dojo Master before?
No, I've not been interviewed by a Dojo Master. But I will tell you this, it was important enough for me to be here with you as a Dojo Master because today is my 10th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm waking up with you instead of my wife. And so, we
That's awesome.
I got to get home here after this, but excited about being here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks. So tell me a little bit about the Crucible Group. What is that? What do you do?
Yeah. So the crucible, the term crucible means elements forming to create something new. And so my background has always been in sales enablement, sales management, and business management. And so if you think about it, so many companies early on in their success, the success comes from the individual heroics of the founders and some key players.
Right.
But then what happens is they go through this peak where they enjoy that growth, and then usually some stagnation, and then growth again. And what happens is I think of that plateau, that flat area, is the crucible. That's when the company tends to reinvent themselves because they have to institutionalize processes and ways they do things. And so in the world of sales, it's everything from sales training to your CRM tool to your comp models, that type of thing. And so try to go in and help companies as they go through that growth phase to scale their business.
Yeah, and that we do marketing and operations, and specifically sort of avoid sales because it's not my favorite thing.
Right.
But always ends up being something that's impacted. So if you do good marketing, you need to have salespeople who can pick up on the leads. And by the way, just because you call it sales and marketing inside your company, they're really two different practices and principles, things that you're kind of trying to do with each of them. And then operationally, making sure that the sales organization knows how to pass deals across, that things are going to get delivered correctly, all that. I worked with a business partner who will remain unnamed at one point, who told me that sales was a mystery. That there was absolutely no way to build a process, and you don't believe in that, right?
No, I think there are. I think there's some art and some science there, and I think there are certainly salespeople that are intuitively and naturally good at what they do. I mean, you're an example of that, and I tend to think of those salespeople as, in many cases, unconscious competence.
Right.
They do it well. They don't necessarily know how, but also would go back, and my background goes back 20-some years, and I came up in the world of solution selling. Mike Bosworth, well-known author. And, one of the real premises of that training methodology, and most sales training methodologies, are repeatable, definable things you can do to establish credibility, to diagnose a situation, to paint a vision of a solution. And so I believe very much that there's some DNA in there, but there's also, I've seen any number of salespeople worked with over the years become great salespeople because they get their brain around what they do well and replicate it.
Yeah, and with companies that are trying to create a sales organization or get one to work, because that's often what we run into. So we most of the time we're going in and there is the heroic salesperson, and maybe they've replicated a little bit of their DNA into one or two individuals, but they're having a real problem figuring out how to get the next one, right? And then they're kind of stuck. They've got this level. And the owner typically is so passionate about the business that they can just talk about it in a way that you want to participate, right? And they're doing things that, like you said, they don't know they're doing. So when you walk into that from a sales enablement perspective, and I love that as a concept, right?
Right.
Because it's like you're enabling other people to help move things along and make the sales. What are the first things you're trying to address? Like, how do I know as the owner? Like, how do I know what I need to what do I need to handle first?
Yeah. Well, I think a couple things. One is there's no more powerful force in a small business than what I think of as founder's pride.
Yeah.
And whether it's the individual founder or some of those key early players. And so you're right. Many times those founders, their passion shows through for what they're doing, and that carries the ball. But it's hard to scale that, and
Right.
yeah, you can't do it.
And you don't know you can't make that for someone else.
No, you can't. I mean, I always say it this way: you can't scale random events, right?
Right.
And so what I tend,
Or we hope not.
yeah, well,
Right.
you can try. But so I tend to think of it as, if you look at the world of sales, there are about 25, I call them work streams.
Okay.
25 work streams that go into creating a sales culture. Every company in some form or fashion is a sales company. If you're not selling it, you're not delivering it.
You don't have a company.
You don't have a company, right? But what you do is you break that down into kind of different legs of the octopus. There's the go-to-market plan. There's the compensation model to drive behavior. There's messaging, and there's knowledge transfer. There's the CRM tool. There's training, which is not just a point in time, but an ongoing knowledge reinforcement. And if you take those things and kind of literally take them one at a time, one of the things I try to do is just help people put the right thinking around it.
Right.
And the right thinking comes from taking into consideration what that owner's doing well, what's worked, what's unique about that business, but then also saying, okay, a couple other legs to that stool. One of those legs is, what are buyers doing? How are buyers changing? How are buyers evaluating whether it's technologies or products or services now? And then ultimately, the other one I think of are third-party data points.
Okay.
So as an example, and most of my world's technology,
Yeah.
but there's a group called the Bridge Group
Okay.
that publishes something called the Periodic Table of Sales and Marketing. And it's just all this wonderful statistical information about the average quota, the average sales rep, how many calls they make a day, how many insight, that type of thing. So you pull those three things together and attack a work stream, and then you move to the next one. I mean,
I love that idea too, because metrics is one of the things that helps specifically sales. Salespeople love, they want to hit something. They got like these numbers to look at. And as the owner, you may not know how to define those, or as the person kind of trying to create that organization. I've seen it work where, the salesperson, the owner knows we want to make a certain number, but they can't necessarily translate that well. So having something gives them an idea of what the standard is, and at least you can start with that.
Yeah, and I think one of the first things that any owner or sales leader needs to know is, what's our formula?
Yeah.
And the formula can be anything from saying, if we do these things on social media, or these advertisements, or this number of sales call, it's going to result in this.
Right.
And this, if we usher those properly through the sales pipeline, will result in this. And so I think you have to have your arms around the basis of that formula. And I think the second thing that comes to mind when you mention that is, in terms of metrics, there are two big buckets of metrics. There are results-based metrics.
Yep.
But then there are also activity metrics.
Okay.
And so understanding the cadence that salespeople and the marketing and sales engine, what does that cadence look like to produce the outcome you want, is also, in many cases, more important.
Yeah. And so with organizations that you're working with, are you typically coming into an established sales organization that then just needs to maybe some care and feeding? They're at the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy and needs, like food and water. Or are you helping an organization establish what that sales organization would look like? Does that question make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I would say it's both.
Okay.
So in my prior life, I had a Salesforce.com systems integration business. I co-founded it, and we had a great run with Salesforce and exited that business in 2014. But in the process there, we worked with about 800 companies. And I certainly wasn't hands-on with all of those 800, but one of the things that kept me a little bit amazed was, of those 800, almost all of them on any given day thought they were the most dysfunctional company on the face of the earth, right?
And they all say, we're very different from everybody else.
Yeah. And then you turn around the next day and it's the most special, great place to work. I mean, and that's the roller coaster of any business. But what I would say is, if you think about companies as they grow there, and you think about one of those work streams, something like a social media or digital media strategy, you almost have the foundation. What would we do just to get our toes in the water and start doing this? And then you have kind of the in process, and then you have almost a mature model.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I'll help customers do is kind of benchmark, where are we on these things?
Yeah, yeah.
And so if you look at something like comp models,
right?
Pay what you're going to pay a salesperson. Well, I've got a client that says, I'm paying all my salespeople a salary. That's it.
Right.
Well, and that's not the most motivating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no incentive.
Yeah, no real incentive there. But you might say, okay, well, let's if you look at that, an evolution of that, you could say, all right, let's give them a strong base and then a bonus structure.
Right.
And then the next evolution of that might be, say, let's bring the base down more, let's leverage the comp more. And then the next one may be, they're just different evolutions of it. So I think as much as anything with those owners, it's having a conscious conversation around those topics. Not that you have to address them all, not that you have to wrestle them all to the ground, but to say, okay, over the next, whatever time frame, these are things we need to address. Let's do it, and at least set our eyes on it ahead of time versus being completely, chasing our tail and putting out fires on a given topic.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a scenario.
Okay.
I'm going to test you a little bit.
All right. All right. Let me get my drink of water here.
So let's say that I'm running a company.
Yep.
We'll say small, $3-4 million, something like that.
Okay.
$3 million, $4 million worth of sales, that kind of thing. And I want to scale my sales organization.
Yep.
So I have the opportunity as the founder, because I'm the guy who knows how to go sell it and do all that kind of stuff. Do I go out and hire a salesperson first, or do I go hire a sales manager first? Do I hire someone who could be the sales manager? I see sort of kind of almost a breakdown in the two of those.
But I think there are a couple things. There is an old adage that says salespeople don't always make great sales managers.
Right.
And it goes back to what we said earlier, that sometimes your best salespeople are the unconscious competence. They do things well, but are not necessarily great at conveying and that knowledge transfer and coaching and mentoring. And you can look at a lot of sports analogies of that. Somebody that may be a great player may not be a great coach, that type of thing. But with that said, I think I think you have to find the right person for the role in a company that size, certainly, and that can be any number of things. It can be somebody that's a subject matter expert. It can be somebody that's a sales manager type. It can be somebody. I love the idea of a salesperson being a player coach and getting to build themselves into that management role, and so those are key things. But I think the most important thing in that scenario is that the owner or founder or the person who's traditionally been responsible for sales has a very good understanding of what it is they want. And a lot of times what I see is a founder type who is a strong subject matter expert on something, and then they yield control of sales to this person they bring in, and almost with a sigh of relief, this person will now handle it.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. And that's a mistake. That's scary because the term sales and sales manager can mean 100 things.
Right.
But I like to think of it in the coaching. I'll sometimes give an owner in that regard is think about 4 things that a sales manager does. And this is a generalization, but I think it'll hold true. So number one, in terms of where they spend their time, number one, sales executives spend their time doing the corporate dance. Okay, the meetings at corporate, the board, the walk in the hall, whatever. There's that bucket of stuff, right? Second bucket is kind of strategy, sales enablement, figuring out the number, hiring, all that stuff, right? Third bucket would be getting deals done.
Yeah.
Okay, out in the field, we're going to push it across the line, get it done this quarter. Fourth bucket would be coaching and mentoring.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's interesting and the mistake a lot of owners make and a lot of sales managers can gravitate towards is to follow that order. I spend most of my time doing the corporate stuff, spend a lot of time doing the sales ops, enablement, working with marketing, whatever, and then I do some time out there in the field getting deals done, and then I kind of neglect the coaching and mentoring of reps.
Got it.
Right? But if you think about it, if you flip that, if I spend more of my time as a sales manager coaching and mentoring and getting deals done, then that takes care of everything. That's where you create leverage to be able to grow that sales team and that sales force. And so I think one of the things a CEO or an owner should be very clear on is, what do I want you to do? What's the ask in terms of time management, in terms of coaching, in terms of doing deals? It's easy, and I've seen some sales managers, maybe with good intentions, maybe with not good intentions, but spend a lot of time at corporate and a lot of time doing stuff other than getting out there, riding with the reps, spending the time in the field. And the best managers I ever see are the ones that are out there getting it done.
And it's such an interesting, just if you think about the parallelism of that into everything in business, if you take care of the basics, the rest of it takes care of itself, or starts to take care of itself. And we all want to focus on the sexy part, right? Like you were earlier talking about, marketing, and almost they want the big idea. They want the Don Draper, key message. And it's like, okay, let's get the basics going. And then when we have those, we can very easily add on top. But if we start there, then everything fizzles out below it. So
Absolutely.
you got to kind of think about that. Very nice. And so talking to me about things that are interesting to you, maybe in the sales category, like any companies, deals, things that you think are kind of interesting in your area?
Yeah, it's interesting. So if you think about the world of sales enablement and the world of marketing technologies, in 2011, there were about 150 MarTech companies out there, right? And I think the most recent number I've seen now is like 18,000. And it's just this whole barrier to entry, the cloud, SaaS, what have you. So there are now lots of companies out there competing for mind space. And so one of the things that's interesting to me is some of these companies are taking things towards what I would almost call prospect enablement. How do you enable the prospect to do more on their own? Because this whole buyer's journey concept, I used to not buy into that, by the way. I'm an old crusty sales guy. It's like, you marketing guys can talk about your buyer's journey stuff, but we meat eaters will sell it. But I've converted, completely, because so much of the buyer's journey and the experience buyers are having is taking place well before a salesperson's engaged. And so a company I'm working with right now that I'm really excited about is a company called Omedym. Which if you let's see if you get it, Omedym, think OMEDYM.
Yeah. I think it's a backwards. My demo.
Demo. There you go. There you go.
Right.
No, but I'm having a lot of fun with them, and they're doing some really neat stuff in video. And if you think about, if you think about if Google and YouTube had a baby, what would it look like?
Right.
Yeah. So they're pretty excited. I can,
Yeah, I think you should come back and talk about that, because that would be an interesting thing to consider, because you admitted the curmudgeon piece, right? And so I owned a research company prior to what I do now, and I started to see that transition where people went from being sold to becoming buyers, right? Like, I don't want to be sold, I want to buy. Like, make it easy for me to buy from you.
Make it easy, and if you think about so much of how we sell in the technology world and in business to sales, we introduce a lot of friction to the buyer. And so
a lot to, like, fill out this form, got to do this thing, put an hour on your calendar, la, 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 la. And I'm like, can I just see what it does? So, I think that's an interesting thing. So we'll come back. We'll have you come back and talk about that.
I'd love to anytime.
Yeah, so we've been talking today about sales enablement. Mike Ladd with the Crucible Group. We'll put all of his contact information in the show notes so that you can get in touch with him.
If you're ready to unleash the beast, connect with us at ligerpartners.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media so you get all new episodes of Canned Heat.